we're back on, I think, with a new recording, and we got 27 seconds left talking about homelessness. Go.
Yeah. So what I was saying is that we have heard from our shelter providers that they are not built or have the capacity to serve as sort of the permanent housing for our unsheltered population. And so we really have to take a harder look at working with those service providers to make sure that we are doing the systems reforms that they're asking us to do, so that you know, the primary thing that folks aren't relying on are emergency shelters, which are very, very high barrier and are really in a tough position of wanting to help but not being able to do so. So we're gonna stay steadfast to those strategies that were recommended by Barb Poppy, and the hope is that within a year to two, we'll be able to see a very sharp decline in the number of people who are put in the position of having to live outside.
Great, thank you. So now we'll go to our follow-up questions. These are 1-minute answers, and Ben Lindsay is going to have the first, then Liz Campbell.
Council member, the current minimum for affordable units in new residential buildings is 2%, and that minimum is not strictly enforced. Do you think that should be raised? What to, and why?
Okay, so I think that the minimums are set. I think you're talking about the mandatory housing affordability program, and we are currently taking a relook at ratcheting up those percentage points, and part of the reason that that's important is because under the incentive zoning program that had lower percentages, we weren't seeing the returns that we expected and that we wanted to see. And in addition to it, those accountability processes weren't in place. So every neighborhood has a different, unique need in terms of displacement, both physical, geographic, and economic displacement. And it's really important to me that we consider the specific neighborhood needs as it relates to those displacement issues on a neighborhood-to-neighborhood perspective. So where we have been averaging is at about 5%, but in some neighborhoods like Yesler Terrace, for example, that number is going to be closer to 8 or 9%.
Our next question is from Liz Campbell.
Hey Lorena, this is Liz, and I want to start out by thanking you for your support on the three-legged CPC. It looked beautiful to me, and I'm really excited about it. But you're going to head into collective bargaining soon, and I'm wondering how that's going to play out. How much of what we've got going in terms of oversight on the city level is going to remain after collective bargaining?
In the police accountability area?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great question. So that's one that we're really being careful about. Obviously, we are a pro-union city, and being respectful of our collective bargaining obligations is really important. But here's the reality: is we are not going to pay for constitutional policing. We should not be in a position where we are going to pay a premium for respecting people's constitutional and civil rights. And the city has to be very clear in its position in that regard. One of the things we're going to do in the accountability legislation is lay out that we believe that everything in that accountability legislation is related to constitutional policing, and I believe that is true. And my hope is that we'll continue to be able to work with the union to be able to come to an agreement where they will recognize that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish, and that's a shared goal. And you know, I serve on the Civil Relations Policy Committee, and will continue to be part of the conversations around how it is we make sure that the accountability legislation isn't chipped away. And one of the things we can do is have a monitor in labor relations to make sure that slip back doesn't occur.
Right. Next question is from Bevan McLeod.
Hi, Lorena. My question is, you mentioned the Housing First model, and I'm wondering what your suggestion is in terms of funding that.
Well, I think what we just did as voters around doubling the housing levy is how we fund that. The one of the reasons we got behind the doubling of the housing levy was because many of the housing models that would be funded would be people-centered housing first type of models. And so we have our funding source. It's a matter of making sure we stay steadfast in the prioritization of the revenue that's going to be created as a result of the passage of that levy, to make sure that we continue to fund housing models that we know are going to be effective in moving people from housing instability and moving unsheltered into supportive permanent housing, and my hope is that we will be able to do that.
Great. Our next question is from John Scanlon.
Hi, I was really excited about the legal fund that was announced recently that you were a leader on for our immigrant communities. Do you have any additional ideas over the next 4 years as to how we can support our immigrant and refugee populations in the city?
Holy smokes, that's the magical question. Yes. So I'm working on a few things. One is, how do we create a toolkit around U visas? So U visas are something that are provided to victims of crime, particularly domestic violence survivors, who will, those U visa certifications will, if we standardize those, it will make the process of getting protection under our immigration laws so much easier, and it'll give domestic violence survivors a clear pathway to leave their abuser without the fear of being reported to ICE and be deported. That's one. The second thing I'll mention that is a big project and priority for me is the area of crimmigration, which is, how does our criminal laws and our criminal system and our law enforcement system effectively criminalize immigrants. This is a national effort across the country that is taking place. I'm working close with the Justice Advocacy Network here in the city of Seattle that is made up of criminal justice reform advocates on tackling this issue and coming up with clear strategies on how it is that we make sure that we are not inadvertently or intentionally criminalizing people just because they're immigrants.
Our next question is from Clayton Evans.
Hi, Lorena. You mentioned with respect to homelessness, you used the phrase, take a harder look at working with service providers. Could you please be a little more specific?
Yes. So what we've heard from service providers is a couple of things. One is, I'll use a specific example with the Downtown Emergency Service Center. In that case, the case workers there, their crisis teams there are some of the lowest paid workers that are doing the hardest work in our city. And there are some major wage equity issues there that need to be addressed to avoid fatigue and to be able to give our service providers the best talent that they can find in order to help us solve the issues around transitioning unsheltered folks from living on the streets into permanent supportive housing. That's one clear way. The second way is that I think a lot of our service providers need some and have asked for some technical assistance around how is it that they can transition from programs that have not historically been successful to programs that have shown results in terms of again, giving people that housing stability that they need.
Thank you.
I'll ask the final follow-up question. So regarding the income tax and other progressive taxation, what are your thoughts, and what do you think is going to work, and where do we go from here?
Well, I think there's a clear sense in the city that tax reform should be a top priority. Just today, I had a conversation with Representative Frame around her thoughts on comprehensive tax reform at the state level. I think it's really important for us here in Seattle to be creative and to think through what could a city income tax look like. And so I was really proud to be supportive of the resolution that was sponsored by Councilmember Herbal to begin that body of work. And I'm excited to see how the work group evolves to give us a real opportunity to call to question our taxation system. And the reality is that we as a city are being put in a vice grip, and we need more progressive revenue tools to be able to take care of the basic needs of our population. And I think that the city income tax is one of those tools.
Great, thank you. So we're about out of time. If you want to take 30 seconds for a closing statement.
I just want to thank you all for your time and your dedication to doing these interviews. I know that you all have other things to do in your lives, but I really do appreciate it. As a strong Democrat, I know that we are all in a place where it is more important now than ever to be united as a party and to really make sure that we're supporting candidates who are going to be the new wave of our progressive democratic movement. And I'm proud to be one of those individuals, and I hope to be able to earn your support once again.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you all for your time.
And that sound is clapping, so thanks for being available. Really appreciate it. And we'll be in touch about next steps in our process.
Thank you so much. Good night.
All right, good night.